Welcome to Tea and Water with Jessica and Roxanne. Today I have the incredible pleasure of introducing you to Roxanne Beckford Hoge, who's running for supervisor of the Board of Supervisors of LA County in District 3. Hi, good morning, Roxanne.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the water and the tea.
A lot of people have not heard about you yet. However, a lot of other people have heard great things about you.
Thank you.
I had the incredible pleasure of meeting you at the farmer's market in our village a couple months ago, right as you were starting your campaign. Before we get started on what is a supervisor,
That's kind of a basic, good starting point.
I would love to ask you to just give us like a general of who you are. Who are you, Roxanne?
I'm a mom. I mean, first and foremost, I would have to say that a really big part of who I am is being a mother to my 4 kids. And people always go, 4 amazing, beautiful kids. Some days, some days, not so much. I'm actually an immigrant from Jamaica, the island of, not New York. And I got to California as soon as I could. Our family emigrated to Florida first because Jamaicans go there or Canada or New York. And we lived in Florida for a long time. And then I actually won a nationwide screen test, the Miami division, and the precursor to E, which was Movie Time, flew me out here.
So how old were you when you came to the U.S.?
I was 11. It was 1976. It was a time, I think, of not unlike this, right? Gas lines, prices were bad. There was an American malaise. And yet it was the most amazing journey and an incredible transition. America is a country separated from Jamaica by a common language. I mean, people have said that, about England and America. But to come here as a little girl speaking the Queen's English, it was an adjustment. It was a huge adjustment. My first day in school, I raised my hand and asked if anybody had a rubber. Anyone? Which is an eraser. That's what we call an eraser. So I was super popular, not. So I have that outcast thing and the underdog thing totally taken care of. But when I got here to LA to be an actor, I gave myself a year to get a SAG card, and I got one. And I've been a working actor for 30 years, and I have a husband and a business, and I love, being in LA is big, but we have all these little villages. And so I love my little village.
So now tell me, what is an LA County supervisor?
It's a great question because most people don't know. And, most of us aren't really interested in politics, right? I mean, we can talk about sort of presidential big picture issues, but the politics that affects our daily lives happens really close to us. So city council, board of supervisors, school board level stuff. But in LA, it turns out the most populous county out of 3,200 counties in the country has only 5 supervisors. And the supervisors for a county are supposed to be mundane, keep the lights on, keep the water running, pay the bills kind of people. And instead, we have a system that's gone nuts. So we have 5 county supervisors for 10 million people. So that's 2 million each that they're supposed to represent. And they're more powerful than the governors of about 40 other states collectively. And individually, they're more powerful and represent more people than about 14 other states. They used to be referred to as the 5 kings. They used to be 5 gentlemen back in the Mike Antonovich, Don Knabe days. And now it's 5 women, and everyone thought, oh, this is so amazing. But it turns out that the Board of Supervisors is basically the cast of The View. And they're 4 people who march in lockstep and 1 lone voice of sanity, Catherine Barger. And they're legislative, executive, and quasi-judicial all wrapped into one. Their latest proposed budget is $38 billion with a B dollars, and nobody knows who they are and what they do.
So they manage, if the budget passes, $38 billion amongst 5 people for Los Angeles County. Now, what kind of decisions are they responsible for?
I don't know if you are aware, but we had a little bit of a pandemic for the last 2 years. And so we all discovered that LA Public Health is under the auspices of the Board of Supervisors. And they can hire and fire that department. They run and budget for that department. They're responsible for that department. And they elevated Barbara Ferrer, PhD, and until about 3 months ago, asked her no hard questions at all about the edicts and diktats that she was issuing from that office. At the same time they did that, they've taken the responsibility that they have over the sheriff, who is a constitutionally elected officer responsible for public safety, from which all other rights and privileges flow, right? Like we can't solve traffic if you can't get in public transportation. You can't take care of kids if it's not safe for them in school because there's a race riot. We can't walk on our streets because their homeless encampments are taking over the streets. All those things can be under the purview of law enforcement and should be. And we have an elected sheriff, and they are responsible for a large portion of that budget, which they have frozen. They've frozen his ability to hire and fire. They're responsible for LA fire. So all our first responders, for example, they thought it was more important to fire people for not being vaccinated, for example, or to pass a bill saying, we won't go on any official trips to Texas or California. Why you're taking official trips with our money, I have no idea. And to ban single-use plastic takeout utensils, rather than to focus on the destruction that Barbara Ferrer single-handedly wrought on our kids. And you and I have talked about this before. I'm running because of how devastating the past 2 years were for our kids' social, emotional, and educational well-being. They destroyed an entire generation of kids in Los Angeles, and someone should pay.
It's pretty incredible. I'm speechless.
That never happens.
The Board of Supervisors has that kind of power, and you only have 5 people managing it. It's really impressive, the power that they hold. Like you just said, so the Department of Health is under the county supervisors, and that they make decisions that impact us as a whole and how important those decisions are. Tell me why you decided to run. I think you sort of said it, but I just want to make sure I'm not just assuming that's it. Is there any other reasons why you decided to jump into the race?
Well, I'm not doing it as a stepping stone to the presidency. Here's the good news. When you have a naturalized citizen who gets involved in politics, like there's an end point. I think everybody who runs from anything from dog catcher to Senate, they're like, next stop. It's the Oval Office for me. And so I have no illusions of grandeur. I really would like to get back to my life, right? Like I like my life, but I can't work because the Screen Actors Guild has taken the ball and run with it and mandated even boosters for working. I can't, for 2 years, I could not step foot on my kids' private school. I was banned as a volunteer. School didn't happen. My minor kids who are still at home had to attend school on a screen. Tens of thousands of kids have just disappeared from LAUSD, our public school system. And so I'm running because when this all happened, we all of a sudden realized who was pulling the strings and who had their boot on our neck. And it was public health held up by the Board of Supervisors. And so I started, like a total geek, watching and participating in LA County Board of Supervisor meetings, which are on Tuesdays and which everyone should do online because they still don't let us attend. So for 2 years, they deemed themselves essential. They said, you're not essential, you are, and I'll make a decision about you later, but you can't have your business. Oh, okay. Landlords, you can't collect rent. Oh, that's odd. Notice that they didn't cancel anyone's mortgage payments or property tax payments. But they kept their paychecks flowing, and their juicy paychecks. And they kept the paychecks for the huge bureaucracy they oversee flowing. And they did not go to work for 2 years. They've just gone back to work 2 weeks ago, but still citizens and mere mortals are not allowed to show up or to petition them for redress of grievances. So we watched these meetings and went, what the heck? And it wasn't a matter of going, wow, these people are so intelligent and on the ball, and I am just in awe of their grandeur. It was, these people are idiots who are completely disinterested and incurious and not asking questions that would get us to the solution. Now, their solution could differ from my opinion of what something could be, but they don't even ask questions. They just rubber stamp things brought to them by staffers, day in, day out.
From an outside perspective, from somebody who has no idea about the Board of Supervisors, what would you say to people who would say, like, how is that possible? Like, how would we elect a group of people who aren't paying attention to these very critical issues that we're facing? And we know that we have very critical issues in LA County because we're all faced with them. We're dealing with the problems, every single one of us, regardless of whether we're in the poorest of neighborhoods or the wealthiest of neighborhoods. We're all impacted by these decisions.
We are all doing our best in our lives to sort of first of all, traffic sucks out so many hours of productivity out of our lives. It took me like an hour and a half to get to you today from North Hollywood. And so we have families, we have businesses, and the thing about Angelenos specifically, and people make fun of us with La La Land, we are super chill. We are ready to vote ourselves tax increases at the drop of a hat to take care of other people. We care. We see people on the street and we want to fix those broken souls. We hear about over-incarceration and the amount of people in the penal system, and we're like, oh, that seems so wrong. I want to fix this. And so we're willing, and we do, vote ourselves these tax increases all the time. And then we hand it over to people that nobody pays attention to because, quite frankly, who's ever heard of the Board of Supervisors? That sounds like a yawner. And their meetings are mind-numbingly dull. And so you could be forgiven for going, you know what? I don't have 9 hours in my day to pay attention to this. And I trust, the thing about America that I don't think you appreciate if you're from here, but just how high trust a society America is, that we willingly turn over huge swaths of our lives to people we've never met because we just know the American way is to do the right thing. Turns out that we've let people use all the offices, certainly in California, and we'll just talk California, as this merry-go-round of, okay, you're term limited in that chair. You're going to take that chair. I'm going to take this chair. And then this person in this chair is going to come over and sit in this chair. And we vote, oh, that name is familiar, because they got term limited out of another chair. And they're just hopping from sinecure to sinecure and cashing these paychecks. And we think they're public servants, and they are not. They're not.
Well, what you're describing is a system where the government, they're helping themselves in their positions rather than looking to their constituents.
Yeah, I mean, I will talk about something that is it's so in the weeds, but it kind of illustrates it. So Measure J, we passed it because we all went, over-incarceration, yes, it's a problem, we should do something about it. What has the Board of Supervisors done with millions of dollars over the past few years? They came up with a committee. The committee studied some stuff, and the stuff that they studied resulted in the most beautiful charts and infographics. Really nice. Colors and arrows, and you really should look them up. They haven't done anything, but the charts are spot on. And the money that's been made from the making of the charts, good stuff.
Is that what also happened to Measure H?
Well, so we have spent a lot of money, and what I can see and what you can see is that there are a fabulous number of tents, very nice tents. My family is of 6 people, like to get a large tent at our, like we were like, ooh, can't really do the tent. Really nice tents all over the streets of LA. and an amazing collection of tiny homes, which I believe at a Home Depot you can price out for a good one for like $2,000, but we spent way more than that. And the people at LASA are fabulously wealthy. We haven't taken a significant number of people off the streets. We haven't made inroads in the broken people who are either mentally ill and self-medicating with drugs or creating drug-induced psychosis by taking drugs. Like, we haven't fixed that.
So how are you going to jump in, and what would your position be jumping into the View? How does that play out?
Morning, ladies. Let's have tea. I would, we could totally sit down. And here's the thing. Everyone likes to talk about diversity and inclusiveness. But it seems that their version of diversity is just, do your package of thoughts and policies come in a different color skin than mine? And then call that diversity. So I would bring real diversity as the only immigrant, I do speak Spanish, but plenty of my conservative Spanish friends are like, no, we speak English. So it's it's the lingua franca of the board. But the fact is that critical thinking is a lost skill. Mike Gatto, who is a Democrat, former assemblyman, he shared something once that I've shared a million times since then. It's on critical thinking. Like, you have to say, cui bono, who benefits? And always say to the people closest to the problem, how do we fix this? Instead of asking for commission, for example, one of the questionnaires I got said, what would you do about the Dominguez Channel? Again, a lot of charts. They did a lot of charts. So Dominguez Channel is the rather odorous issue that arose from the lack of flow coming out in that area. And so the Board of Supervisors put lots of money into hotel rooms and all these other things. We're going to find stuff and drop it in the water. And I talked to a firefighter who's from there and a station chief, and he said, we need to have flow. You need to let it dry out, and we need to have either go down what we do with the LA River or have like a Hyperion water. Why wasn't he asked? Why were we spending money on hotel rooms and charts and graphs instead of asking the people who deal with that stuff every day? That's what you do. I don't have the solution to everything at all, but I take sort of the team mom, business owner, customer service approach. If I can make everyone feel that they've given up something and make everyone feel that they've also gotten something, then it's a win. Like, you don't want any of your kids knowing that someone else is the favorite. You want them each thinking that they're the favorite. And that's kind of how you have to approach Board of Supervisors.
I think your slogan is Super Mom for Supervisor. I'm now seeing where the super mom comes from. So what is your experience as a mother? How does that come into play in you running for this position? How do you think that's going to greatly benefit?
Well, the superpower of every parent is the ability to juggle and to maintain a thought outside your own head. Whether you have one child or 9, it's to realize that things impact other people differently and that there are always intended consequences. So if you give in to the I just want ice cream for dinner, you know what's coming. We all know what's coming next. And the Board of Supervisors, like all elected officials who never have to deal with unintended consequences, they never actually see the after effects. I was in a forum yesterday, and people were saying, we did this rent moratorium, and by golly, by gosh, we had no idea that people would have a hard time filling out a 36-page form, or that there would be repercussions when we didn't have the workforce to handle it, and that the only way for people to qualify would be that they had just refused to pay rent. So we are now not taking care of people who pulled money out of cash advances or borrowed to pay their rent. They are not eligible. And that, by the way, we put nothing in the system to guarantee that the landlords would be made whole. And so now they're going to lose their properties, although that seems to have been more of a feature, not a bug, because I don't know if you heard our favorite Mike Bonin say, when all these landlords get foreclosed on, we're going to buy all those properties up at a discount.
I'm so surprised he would ever say something like that.
Out loud. Like, dude, you're supposed to keep that on the down low. We're not supposed to know that what you want is a government takeover of private property, which is where we're heading. And if you understood math, human nature, or real life at all, when you listen to the 90 minutes of public comment that individual landlords, and by the way, I don't have a problem with institutional landlords either, begging and crying and saying, I'm owed $50,000, I'm owed $100,000 in back rent, I can't, I'm gonna lose my property. You wouldn't blithely then go, sorry, landlords, I'm voting to extend the eviction moratorium anyway, as one of our supervisors did. Sheila Kuehl, who I'm running to replace because she's retiring to spend more time with her attorneys. Maybe a little investigation happening. I don't want to cast aspersions. She doesn't leave. Oh, she does leave her home. She does leave her home after she says we can't eat at restaurants. She does go to a fabulous Santa Monica restaurant to eat outdoors the night that she passed that before it took effect.
So tell me, you want to join the Board of Supervisors, and you already know that what you've described is a club-like feeling. You describe them as the View. You know that doesn't sound like they're very open to new ideas, but you want to bring those ideas forward as your experience as a mother, showing that there are consequences to the decisions that we make and that we let happen. And it's always good to have another opinion. What do you think about the relationship between our sheriff and the Board of Supervisors? As a resident and a mom, I am terribly concerned about our current situation with public safety on our streets here in Los Angeles, the rise in crime. And so, as a resident, I am very interested in having our law enforcement be supported in all of their efforts. And what I have witnessed in the news and attending those meetings, it appears as though the Board of Supervisors is very uninterested in the efforts of our sheriff and more concerned in some kind of to me appears like a witch hunt towards not just our sheriff himself, but the department itself. What are your opinions on that, and how would you resolve the current issues between the Board of Supervisors and the sheriff?
It's contentious. There is no doubt that all parties need to be sent to their room without any supper, right? Like that is step one. It has gotten super toxic, but that's what happens, first of all, when you can't be in a room together and you have no interest in working something out. So the Board of Supervisors, the org chart, which is horrifying, the Sheriff's Department is part of it, but they're also each of the cities, for the unincorporated areas, but each of the cities contained within the county of LA, a lot of them have their own police departments as well. And then, of course, in LA, the city of LA, there's the LAPD is appointed by the mayor. No one in elected office at all, not just the Board of Supervisors, seems to think that policing and law enforcement is a good thing. I'll say it unequivocally. I am a fan and a proponent of broken windows policing. Bill Bratton's idea, you cannot let your kids get away with, hurling expletives at grandma and not nip that in the bud. And while the relationship with the sheriff should be one of respect and a little distance, you don't want to be, over at each other's house for barbecues all the time because it is a supervisorial relationship in a little bit. There's no reason for it to get personally contentious, especially when that contention is based on the idea of the Board of Supervisors that criminals are more important than victims or residents. There is no reason that we should pay some of the highest taxes in the country and not get something for it. And what we should get is an LA that is clean, that is safe, and that is sane. When I came to this country, from the third world. And I know my Jamaican friends always are like, we're working our way up to the second world. But when I came, it was third world. So when I came to this country from the third world and I drove with my stepfather to Disney World, and my sister and I looked out of the car and said, where is all the trash? Why is there no trash on the side of the road? And he proudly said, well, in America, we have fines for littering and you can't do that. You can't just throw. And we went, that's crazy. You look all over LA and it is a cesspool. And allowing people say, oh, we can't criminalize poverty. Yeah, but I can criminalize strewing crap and human detritus all over the sidewalks. If I don't pull back in my bins after a day, I get a citation. So as Adam Carolla says, they're just going after the rule followers and letting other people turn our home. LA is our home, and they're turning it into a trash heap. And so policing should start with that. Yes, we are cleaning up, and the sheriff can do that. He is responsible for public space. I care about those poor souls. I also care about people who cannot walk on the streets, kids who can't go to libraries, which if you care about equity, libraries are a stepping stone to equal opportunity like nobody's business. And so I've actually met the sheriff and spoken with him, and I think that we would disagree sort of in political avenues, how many angels can fit on the head of a pin, philosophical discussions. We approach things maybe from different perspectives, but we are absolutely in lockstep on people's personal public safety. I'll say one other thing about being an immigrant and having fled democratic socialism. What that ends up with every time is mobs coming after you and changing your mind and making you do things at the tip of a spear or the point of a gun. My mother was hauled out of a car with ill intentions because they thought she voted the wrong way. When you tell people others didn't build that and they don't deserve that, and there's a haves and a have-nots, they're gonna come for the haves. And it's going to be the haves and the haves even more and the have anything. They're going to come for you. I have friends who have woken up in the middle of the night to find people in their house. And when they called 911, the people in their house knew, yeah, they're not coming for a while. So we're going to take our time to gather our stuff. And by the grace of God, they were left physically unharmed. But that stays with you. And the number of people that are at risk. And by the way, what we're just teaching our children to drive down the street and just ignore the bodies and the naked masturbators and the people shooting up and, oh, he may be having a heart attack, honey, but just look straight ahead. That's inhumane. That's teaching people to not see pain because you can't do anything about it.
So what you described of what you had to grow up with in Jamaica is what is actually we're starting to witness on the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah. When you're a little kid and you hear adults talking about who was raped and who was murdered and who was robbed, that stays with you.
Yeah, and I thought, I was terrified of New York when I was a kid. What I'm experiencing now, what my children are experiencing here is a different story. So now, let me bring into that the fact that we're talking about the division of society right now, and it's all levels. You started with sharing what happened to our children, how that got us divided, how the pandemic got us divided, how the choices of people in our government have gotten us divided. How do you suggest, what would you do when elected to bring people together and resolve this so that we're not the haves and the have-nots fighting each other, or the I'm red, you're blue fighting each other?
It turns out the back to basics kind of works, right? Human connection is a sort of a spider web, which are super strong. But when you break them, when you break those bonds, everything collapses. And we started that by deeming people essential, not essential, separating them into clean, unclean, making a real caste system in LA, and what you can do with the Board of Supervisors as the bully pulpit, and also as it's a legislative, executive, and quasi-judicial body, is to stop doing that, is to pull back and really stop trying to virtue signal about, we're going to do this for equity. Okay, well, you've just hurt Black people. You've hurt actual Black people and actual Latino people and actual underserved people by taking away policing. So the old
Explain that further.
When you take away policing and you say we don't need to have police officers in West Hollywood or in wherever, in over policed communities, people die. And so the one stat you can't hide is the murder rate, and Alex Villanueva says it. It's skyrocketed over 94% in the past couple of years, and we see the headlines every day. Our fun used to be watching car chases in Southern California. It's sort of it's a sport here. The news is now leading with shots fired here, shots fired there, home invasion, robbery there. It's a man in Encino stabbed in his own home. That's not entertaining. That's real life. And so when you take away officers who, by the way, community policing works, and it works in the areas that need police the most. And the murders of Black men are up 25 or 30% in the country. I mean, it's mind-numbing how much you're hurting minorities by saying that you're putting them first. And so what I see is a lot of soft bigotry, of low expectations, and really patronizing attitudes coming from all our elected officials, but especially the Board of Supervisors. And again, the unintended consequences of doing things like, well, we're going to let the unhoused take over the libraries. Okay, now an immigrant girl who can't afford hardcover books can't get them because it smells like urine. And if I glance over at the computer screen next to me, I'm going to see something that I'll never get out of my head. And so the oldie but goodie that works is treat people as you would like to be treated. There is no reason in 2022 to be dividing people based on immutable physical characteristics. Okay, I have a certain percentage of melanin, and doesn't make me better, doesn't make me worse. They need to stop doing that.
Thank you for saying that. So,
I mean, I'm pretty awesome, but it's not because of the beautiful cafe au lait color and the naturally curly hair. We're people, and either we click or we don't. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, like if your race or who you sleep with is the most interesting thing about you, you are a colossal bore. You have got to do something more with your life.
Well, and I've been outraged in our district in particular at the desire for our city to take away beaches and parks from all Angelenos, knowing very well who's the most affected by that. Our youth in the disenfranchised neighborhoods.
By the way, that was the most cruel and, it turns out, highly ineffective thing that public health could have done in the pandemic. Filling in skate parks with sand, how punitive and how ignorant. What they should have done was say, everybody to the beach, to the mountains, get outside. Because it's horrifying how many of our kids in Inglewood or Compton or East LA haven't been. They haven't been to the bluff on Pacific Palisades. They don't know that you can just stand there and see the ocean and take in the air. You can walk the steps in Santa Monica. You can hike in Fryman Canyon. Those are all open to everyone, but not when you tape off parking and access and take away the basketball hoops. Like what? Because I guarantee you that my friends who live very well and have private planes and who decamped to Hawaii and were able to Zoom their lives and get DoorDash, they didn't miss out on anything. And when you take away, we're going to have an equity curriculum, so we're going to take away art history as a graduation requirement. Okay, you're still going to the Louvre. Your kids are still seeing the Mona Lisa. And now you've taken away the ability of kids who are disenfranchised to do that. By the way, same thing goes for standardized testing. Standardized testing was there to identify people who had what it took to survive in the cohort that fit them best. So when people tell me, oh, affirmative action, like that's why you got into college. No, kiss my ass. I got into college because I used to be super smart. Then I had 4 children and I'm exhausted. But back in the day, I was really good at book learning, and you could find that out from an SAT and then choose a college or a path that worked with that cohort. The people who, it doesn't mean they're less. Again, if we have, neurodivergent kids or kids who, known as boys, kids who just learn differently or bloom later, and they find a college or university that fits their band of standardized test results, they'll succeed there and then go on. I mean, life isn't a race. It's a marathon, and people finish it at their own pace and in their own style.
So I'm going to completely switch gears. The head of the Department of Mental Health at LA County resigned. I think the announcement came yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What happened? And can you tell us more about the Department of Mental Health? Because obviously we're seeing an asylum on our streets now in Los Angeles. And tell us more about the Department of Mental Health and your plans on there.
Well, it's really interesting because the Department of Mental Health is a creation of the Board of Supervisors. So it's not one of the mandates, so it's not in the charter. They added it. The Department of Public Health is. And lay people might be thinking, wow, I would think that public health would encompass mental health. And I would think there's definitely some palace intrigue going on there, and I don't know the ins and outs of that. But I would think that if one department created such an epic tragedy and looming disaster of mental health, that they might be interested in perhaps fixing the problem. Everything is related. So yes, homelessness, everyone was now saying, well, we need, well, let's throw some more money at the mental health aspect of it. But again, everything they did under the auspices of the billions of dollars, $6.5 billion in the last 10 years, by the way, and so much more, but they claim they need more. We see the disaster. And so why aren't hard questions being asked so that we can fix them? So I don't know if he retired out of a sense of moral outrage and like I'm being asked to do the impossible, or if there's going to be some questions raised about the spending there. But mental health and public health should work together hand in glove. And by the way, also coordinate with the sheriff, because what we see, there's 2 disasters right now. What we see on our streets, and again, which came first, chicken or the egg? Is it self-medication or is it drug-induced psychosis? But what we've done to young people by locking them up, telling them that they're disease vectors and responsible for killing grandma, grandpa, when actually making decrees that COVID positive people get put into nursing homes, killed a lot more people than any school kid with a snivelly nose ever did. That's a crisis that we're going to be paying for a very long time. I know people, and LA is 10 million people, but it's a bunch of small towns. I personally know so many people whose kids dallied with suicidal ideation, who started cutting themselves, girls who refuse to unmask because they feel invisible, kids who actually overdosed and died in the past year or 2. The kids are not okay. And that should be laid squarely at the feet of LA Public Health and Barbara Ferrer, and not just the mental health department. But yes, a complete overhaul of all of them is needed.
That's a really big task.
It's a huge task. And by the way, they have a huge number of employees with which to do this. You can get a lot done just by asking questions, by saying who benefits, and by saying, show me, Cuba Gooding, show me the money, show me the results. What are your results? What have you done with these billions of dollars? I see that you've, painted lots of slogans on things, and the charts are fabulous.
I'm really happy to hear that the Board of Supervisors has mastered the art of charts.
Yes. They've also mastered the art of handing out huge amounts of money to settle lawsuits for things that either they inadvertently overstepped their bounds, like when they just gave a contract to the Aspen Institute for combating misinformation around COVID. Well, they may not have brushed up on their Constitution, but there's a little pesky First Amendment in there, and government can make no law abridging the rights of free speech. So if you're giving someone a contract to police speech, we're going to end up having to pay a settlement on that too.
Do you know how much that's costing us?
No, I haven't seen that one. Their line items are enormous. So we'll be going through, look, there'll be a team of people with me should I prevail. And by the way, one thing that I think is so important to say to people who have normal lives, and you're quasi not normal because you're watching this and interested in local politics, our election is a month. It's a cornucopia of elections, and everyone gets a mail-in ballot, and they start arriving on May 9th. They get mailed out on May 9th. So they start arriving on May 10th, and we have until June 7th. And any office that you care about, I think people that want to be involved now are all of a sudden going, I am voting in November. Well, November is too late. If you don't get people through the top two system, which we have for all offices, in June, we're not going to have any good choices in November. And there's a whole host of career politician, merry-go-round jumpers, all running up and down the ballot. And I would even go so far as to say, not quite ignore congressional races. That's all fascinating, but your ballot is going to come in LA. There are 113 pages in a PDF put out by the registrar of candidates and races. There's 154 races all happening at the same time. So to pay attention to those is going to be rough. You're not going to have that many on your individual ballot. It'll be 50 or 60 or something, but that's a ridiculous number. And people think, oh, I'm going to vote for governor and get my sticker and I'm out. But the first race is going to be the U.S. Senate race for special election to fulfill the end of the term vacated by Kamala Harris when she was elevated to the vice presidency. Fellow Jamaican Yardie. But then it's going to be city and county offices. And those you should pay very much attention to, and especially any race that has more than two people in it. If it's got two people in it, they're both getting through to November. So you can cool your jets on that. But do your homework on multi-person races and divvy it up with friends. Have a BYOB party. Ballot. Not booze. I don't recommend drinking after you're done. But fill out your ballot or your sample ballot and go over it with trusted people who are free thinking and who will do the hard work and ask the questions and not just say, oh, well, this guy I really like from the movies and he said climate change, or this guy's been around forever. Well, that's a sign. Or this person was endorsed by the outgoing supervisor. Another sign. And really do the homework. The people who got in the arena, made the effort, are on your ballot, are all trying to do something, and it's up to you to figure out what they're trying to do. Are they trying to keep the status quo, or are they trying to change and give us a safe, sane, clean LA?
So now, switching gears again, here on the West Side, we tend to attract more homeless because we have beautiful beachside with great views. And I know that your Santa Monica is part of your district. Personally, with the issues that we had with our council member in our district, District 11, who's not Santa Monica. Santa Monica's sort of smushed right in the middle of our district.
And everyone needs the maps because the maps are horrendous.
So when he decided he was going to put homeless housing at beaches and parks in our district, our supervisor took a step back and pretended like she had no involvement and had no awareness of what was happening and zero communication. We found out later that that was very untrue and that they were heavily involved in the entire process, given the fact that the county manages the parking lots and has a lot of involvement in anything that would have something to do with those public spaces. looking at Santa Monica and what's happening in the city of Santa Monica. Now, Santa Monica is its own city. They have their own police force. They have their own mayor. But you are supervising the city of Santa Monica, correct? Mm-hmm. What would your authority be and your involvement be, let's say, if you're attempting to tackle the issues of street encampments?
So I'll fight you on the attraction of Santa Monica, because North Hollywood and the Valley, we've got some encampments too. I actually did a cleanup with Scott Pressler where we had to wear hazmat suits, and I cleaned up human stuff in bottles and using triple gloving. So we've got some stuff. We've got some stuff as well. The issue is, first of all, they have no spine. So when the Boise decision comes down and says, oh, you have to have beds for people before you can make them, instead of using attorneys as resources to say, how do we fix this? They went, oh my God, we can't possibly. Well, you can, and you should, and you have an obligation to your constituents. And by the way, that obligation extends to the poor, broken souls who are living on the streets. You're not doing them any favors by not requiring sobriety as a condition of, like, nobody gets a home. I don't get one in Santa Monica. I lived in Santa Monica when I first got here. Guess what happened when I stopped being able to afford to live in Santa Monica? I moved. And every time we've had a child, we've had to move further north to afford the space and we were happy to do it. But I don't get to stay in the place where I landed. So the 30,000-foot view is to first and foremost say, what is housing? What is a right? And it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is not a beach view. It's not a beach view.
Dang it.
I know. I'm so annoyed because I would have liked a beach view. But it turns out, not in the Constitution, not in the Charter. And we've acted as if it's written down somewhere that because someone, whether they fell on hard times, and it's a very small percentage because there are people like Andy Bales and other, that lady you introduced me to in Pacific Palisades, who find homes for families and people who have fallen on hard times. Or an addict, or a felon who was released from jail by our erstwhile governor, or someone who Gascon has declined to prosecute, or just a garden variety drug addict, or someone who got a bus ticket from their state. Oh, go to California, go west, young man. There is no right to encampment. And we should have fought that from day one. And because there's been no spinal column and no testicular fortitude, we have now ended up in a situation where the camel's nose, the camel's hump, the camel is inside the tent and trashing everything. And by the way, one of the perennial candidates and seat shoppers who's running for this race, who claims he's not a career politician, I was told that in private he's very supportive of our sheriff and his efforts to do things. And I said, well, if you don't have the testicular fortitude to stand up and say it's wrong, this is wrong in public, then you're not deserving of anyone's vote. I promise you that I say nothing in private that I do not say in public.
I would believe that.
Yeah, you think? My husband's like, please say things in private, please. But the fact is, no one has a right to live, to defecate, to shoot up, to have sex, to steal stuff on our streets. There is no right to that. And so that is step one, and that's what we should be going from. When we do help people, and again, we should, and my heart goes out to the moms sort of walking the encampments in San Francisco or in Skid Row or here in Santa Monica or North Hollywood with pictures of their kids. I'm searching for this person, and the person no longer looks like that because meth has destroyed their face and their life. It's awful. But we're not helping them by saying, oh yeah, stay in Venice and assault the people who scraped together their pennies or their millions to live on a canal or whatever circumstance, or they've lived in Santa Monica since, 1952 and this is their house. Like you've taken away other people's rights to property, by the way. to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You've actively taken away those rights from other people. So you have to get sober. You can't have your crap all over the street. And if you want free housing, you'll go where we find the free housing. And if that is in industrial areas that are unpopulated, that's what you get. There are a lot of people who've been given Section 8 vouchers or who even have apartments, and they choose to stay on the streets. I'm sure you know that from talking to actual police officers. And so people just need gonads.
While you're speaking, I'm imagining, so you're a mother of 4, mm-hmm. correct? I'm imagining that you've done tremendously well with your children.
You know, when people say, oh, politics must be so hard, and people, I was like, I already don't get 100% approval rating in my own house on any given day. If I'm at 50, I am golden. And I think what we all forget is that people come here fully formed to have their own life experiences, and we are mere vessels. And my children are all interesting, fascinating people, and I wish I could take credit for their amazing humanity, but I'm just a temporary guardian. They're pretty cool. They're pretty cool.
Would they give you the Super Mom Award?
I think they would, but only if they could do it behind closed doors and quietly where I couldn't hear. They don't want to let things go to my head, right? They'll keep you real. I think it was Erykah Badu who said, like, I think it was her, or maybe Alicia, you're getting all dressed up for some fancy event and your kid vomits on you. That reminds you of what life is all about.
It sounds like you are extremely level-headed. I know that given our current political environment, it's hard for people to agree with you publicly.
I do get a lot of whispers. Hey, I totally agree with what you're saying. And remember, it's racist and xenophobic to not vote for me.
Thank you for saying that.
That's the rule. I didn't make the rules, people. That's just the rule. In a race with 3 career politicians, and if I'm the only immigrant and the only person of color, I do believe you really have no choice. But I kid. Actually, you totally have choice. If you think LA is great, if you think our biggest problem is single-use plastic utensils, by all means, vote for the status quo. There are 3 options for the status quo. So you can have your status quo in any particular package you want. They're all nice people. Or you can vote for actual change.
Well, that's what I appreciate, you being so bold and brave and honest and real, is because we have this issue where people are terrified to speak the truth because somebody will go after them for speaking the truth. And there's this concept that we need to remain divided, and it's this or this, rather than we spend very little time in the middle these days finding a middle ground. We don't have to agree on everything.
No, William Wrigley said, if you and I agree on everything, one of us is unnecessary. And I don't think either of us is unnecessary. And I think the other real disappointment of what we learned in the pandemic, and sort of about local offices and stuff, is that people that I trusted to say, decry big money in politics, to say everyone should be in the room where it happens. We want to hear all voices and serve underserved minorities. Those people, public radio, neighborhood councils, are disenfranchising voters and 3 of the candidates in this specific race and in a lot of other races. So talk about the haves and the have-nots, right? There's Hertzberg, Stern, and Horvath, who, yes, are all on the merry-go-round of office shopping and have served and done quite well by serving for years. And then in this race, there's also Craig Brill, Jeffy Gergenti, and myself. And it's odd to me that people that talk so much about tolerance and inclusivity are not allowing Craig or Jeffy or I to participate in the conversation. I find that weird, disingenuous and not a little bit elitist.
But I fully support your campaign. I was the first one to sign your petition very proudly. I knew nothing about you, but it took me less than 5 seconds to know that you are absolutely the right candidate. My heart has never been wrong. So I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for coming and joining me today and sharing some tea and water with all of us.
And thank you for opening your heart and sharing information. And that's all we can do, right? At the end of the day.
Thanks, Roxanne.
Thank you.
Roxanne for Supervisor.